At 7:28 on the morning of July 1st, 1916, something stopped. The enormous British artillery bombardment, which had thundered across northern France for 7 solid days, suddenly went silent. For 2 minutes, an almost unnatural quiet fell over the Western Front. Then, at 7:30 a.m., along a 14-mile stretch of the line, whistles blew. British soldiers climbed out of their trenches and began to walk, slowly, deliberately, across the torn earth toward the German lines. They walked into a history measured not in miles gained but in lives lost. They were young men, volunteers mostly, who had answered a call 2 years before. By lunchtime that day, the British Army had suffered 57,470 casualties. 19,240 were dead by nightfall. The numbers are the beginning of the story. The people are the truth. By the summer of 1916, the Western Front had been essentially static for nearly 2 years. A trench system stretched from the North Sea to the Swiss border, a fortified scar some 450 miles long. In places, no man's land was only 50 yards wide. In others, hundreds. The war had become industrial attrition. Men and metal fed into a machine, progress measured in yards. In February 1916, Germany attacked Verdun to bleed France white. By summer, France was losing around 70,000 men per month there. Joseph Joffre demanded a British offensive on the Somme to relieve the pressure. Sir Douglas Haig hesitated. Kitchener's new army volunteers had limited combat experience. He agreed anyway. The Somme was chosen, quiet ground, soon to be anything but. The point was not primarily to defeat Germany, but to keep France in the war. That context doesn't make the deaths less tragic. It makes the decisions more complicated. This is not a story of grand strategy. It is a story about people sent into the strongest defenses on the front. Now, the pressures of alliance do not explain the specific decisions that turned July 1st into the bloodiest day in British military history. The plan for July 1st rested on one assumption: artillery would do the killing. For 7 days and 7 nights, about 1.5 million shells were fired along a 25-mile front. The barrage would cut the wire, smash the trenches, and leave the defenders dead or stunned. When the guns lifted, the infantry would walk. Their job was to occupy ground the guns had already won, but German defenses were deeper than British planners imagined. Dugouts reinforced with concrete and timber 30 to 40 feet down survived direct hits. At 7:28, the barrage ceased. Germans climbed up and set their machine guns on the parapet. The wire in most sectors was uncut, often churned into denser knots. A significant share of British shells were duds, rushed and faulty. The bombardment's effect was far less than commanders believed, and yet the order stood: walk in formation, do not run. Men expecting flattened trenches advanced into living, waiting defenses. The assumption was wrong. The cost would be measured in minutes. At precisely 7:30 a.m., whistles blew all along the British front. Burdened with more than 60 pounds of equipment, they climbed over the parapets. To the German lines, 200 to 900 yards. At a steady pace, 2 to 10 minutes in the open. A single MG-08 could fire 400 to 500 rounds per minute. There were hundreds of them. The Newfoundland Regiment at Beaumont Hamel advanced into uncut wire and fully manned defences. Delays forced them to attack from a reserve trench across open ground. Of 801 men who went over the top, 684 were casualties within 30 minutes. A regiment effectively destroyed in half an hour. The Accrington Pals, men who enlisted, trained and sailed together, were ordered to attack Serres. In the first 20 minutes, they suffered 584 casualties out of 720 men. In the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, a Lancashire town lost a generation. In a few sectors where wire was cut and defenders late from dugouts, objectives were taken and held. But communications failed. Units destroyed sent no reports. Units holding ground could not call for help. The picture at headquarters bore little resemblance to the truth on the ground. By mid-morning, Fragmented reports revealed catastrophe across most of the front. Haig faced a choice: halt and reassess or press on. He chose to continue, committing reserves, especially where small gains had been made. His reasoning: keep pressure to relieve Verdun and pin German forces. The Battle of the Somme would last 141 more days. Allied casualties about 620,000, German about 450,000, ground gained, roughly 6 miles at the deepest point. Defenders say he had little choice and that Verdun was relieved. Critics call it a refusal to stop the slaughter. 2 days later, the official communiqué reported satisfactory progress. Under the Defense of the Realm Act, the state controlled war news and censored correspondence. There was no mention of 57,470 casualties. Truth arrived not in headlines, but in telegrams and casualty lists. Communities pieced together what had happened through private grief, shared house to house. A single battalion lost meant a single town bereaved. The system did not announce the scale, it dispersed it, name by name. What the British government told its people should make you angry. Britain's new army included the PALS battalions, men who enlisted to serve with friends, neighbours, workmates, men from the same street, the same factory, the same football club. When a PALS battalion was hit, the loss fell on a single community: Sheffield City Battalion, Grimsby Chums, Bradford PALS. The grief was concentrated, not diffuse. At 7:28, a British mine at Lochnagar, 60,000 pounds of explosive, tore the earth open, 91 meters wide, 21 meters deep. The wound remains. Each July 1st, people stand in silence at 7:28 a.m. The most overwhelming memorial is at Thiepval. 72,195 British and South African soldiers with no known grave. Walk past and try to read them all. You cannot. There are too many. Each name was a person, a life, a future that never was. The catastrophic failure of July 1st forced change. Massed walking advances were abandoned for small unit infiltration and fire and movement. The tank appeared on the Somme that September, unreliable, imperfect, but a turning point. Refined through 1917, these lessons helped break the German line in 1918. And a psychological legacy, poetry that reshaped how a nation understood war, power, and sacrifice. Some argue the Somme, despite the cost, wore down irreplaceable German manpower. The truth is complicated. July 1st, 1916, 57,470 casualties, 19,240 dead, most in the first hour. Every July 1st at 7:28 a.m., people gather and stand in silence. History's dark archives. The numbers are real. The names behind them were too.